Hello guys and welcome back to HJW Gaming. It's another update here from my Kings of Men server. Approximately, I think it's about 5 days since my last update, and a hell of a lot's happened since the last time, so I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to get kind of straight into it. If you do enjoy what you see here, please drop a like or please consider hitting subscribe. I am perilously close to 1,000 subscribers now, so anyone who isn't subscribed, if you could hit that sub button, it will make a massive difference to me. Now, as I said, a lot's happened in that last 6 days. You'll hopefully notice on the screen that we have moved to another location from where we were previously, and not all of that being our own choice. But first up, I'll just quickly give a summary of the map and what's happened in the last 5 days. You will see that there has been a hell of a lot of change in that time. I'll start kind of in the north and work my way down rather than just focusing on my own personal areas. So the Chaos area up here in the northwest, there's been no change there. We have no interest in pushing towards Chaos, and Chaos thankfully have other things that they're worried about, and I don't think really have any reason to push towards us. So nothing's really changed there. But as we come across, you'll start to see there's quite a few red pins in the northern side of the map. We have up in the northern area, we do have the Sand and Burn and Crew area up in the north, around the Misty Mountains, with Gundabad as their capital, and they do still hold most of this region. You'll notice there is a red pin for fighting around their pass. For a while they did also own this region here, the Gladden Fields, which is normally called Upper Anduin Vale, but they did lose that to Only and UTTP. And the fighting then progressed upwards towards this pass. You remember previously, this might be Upper Anduin here. Oh yeah, sorry. So they lost Upper Anduin and Gladden Fields as well, sorry. But remember there was previously fighting around kind of northern Mirkwood, as Sand Burn players who had tiles in that region were moved out by UTTP, having once they claimed the region. So they were kind of cleared out of the area, but then eventually UTTP and Only decided to push over and take those additional regions by force away from Sand and Burn, and the fighting has then moved on towards this pass, as you'll see here, which, judging from the fact that it's lost some durability, I assume there has been a siege on that pass in the recent times anyway. But you'll see the pass is owned by UTTP, so they do have, if I scroll over to here, a method to get across, as of course the other side, which is currently owned by Burn, is just a regular crossing. So if they wanted to come across, there's likely potential that they could. You'll see how many forts they have here compared to the other side. It's likely that they could push across, and there's definitely been fighting here. If we look at the pin, it's a 10 million participant ping with 3 million deaths, and it looks like it's primarily headed up by, well, judging from the combatant list anyway, it looks like it's primarily being won by UTTP and Only. There are other points they could enter, of course. There are these passes here over near Erebor, and also one up here in the north near Withered Heath. But for now, that's just kind of a 10 million ping. Actually is quite surprising for that area when you consider some of the other pings just south of here. So when we looked previously, Chaos and UTTP and Only and Sith, Chaos and Sith together with UTTP and Only were having a sparring session around some of these crossings and passes. Now this ping at the minute shows as 17.3 million with 5.7 million deaths. This pin has consistently sat significantly higher than that. If we look at it for now, you'll see all the kind of still the Chaos forts with UTTP Only on the other side, and they're literally just going back and forth. So it looks the same as it was last time. However, there's been movements from both sides. I believe the primary progress has been made normally by the UTTP Only side breaking across to here and doing damage, but then Chaos repel them back and then rebuild on their crossing. That pin has quite a few times in the last week hit over 40 million participants. I think the highest I saw was around 12 million deaths. So whilst at the minute it's less than 20 million, that ping has been probably one of the largest battle pings I've seen on any server, which isn't surprising when you consider the teams involved with Sith, Chaos, UTTP, and Only. And at least at recent times, I said with Sith and Chaos beating UTTP and Only back away from their crossing again, it looks like for the combatant list they were winning the majority of those fights, but they haven't decided to progress towards UTTP and Only. And that might also be down to, of course, the pin up here, as I said. UTTP Only are now fighting in 2 locations. 3 if you include down here as well, though. It's a very small ping, just 1 million participants. So I assume there's been some scuffling made around these tunnels. You see the number of forts all around here. And it's not surprising that some of the battles leaked over into other areas, as of course if they're stalemated here with 40 million participants regularly, you'd wouldn't be surprised to see people take alternate strategies. For now also, if you're interested in seeing Dol Guldur, that is still heavily occupied by Chaos Only at the minute, or Chaos and Sith Kingdom only. I'm surprised they haven't taken the ring yet, to be honest, as chapter-wise. Dol Guldur has been open for a fair while now. I think it's almost a week that Dol Guldur has been open, and Chaos have elected not to take the ring. I don't know if it's down to an agreement with another kingdom to maybe fight with them, I'm not sure. Or fight with them for the ring, sorry, I'm not sure. But for now they've decided not to take it, which is surprising, because you'd think if they pulled away 40 million worth of participants up here for one day, Dol Guldur is not exactly the, it's not the unsurmountable keep that it used to be in maybe earlier seasons. 80 level 50 armies is tough, yes, but with the level of commanders here, they'll be the fully strength, fully gold Sun-Ins will be taking down 5-6 armies at a time, maybe from one player. So it wouldn't be much trouble to get that within 4 or 5 minutes, I think, for them, and then they could rush straight back to the battlefront, fresh in the knowledge that they would have the buff from Dol Guldur, which is, I spoke about this a little bit last season, and that the buff from Dol Guldur is almost insurmountable. 5% to all of your stats. It sounds minuscule, but once you stack all of them up together, it's very difficult to overcome, particularly buffs to things like HP, which make a surprisingly huge difference. So I'm surprised they haven't decided to just take that and move on, and then from then on they'll likely crush most of their battlefronts. If anyone is watching from Chaos, feel free to drop a comment, and kind of, provided it's not exposing anything kind of privileged information within your fellowship, feel free to drop a comment and let me know why that might be. But because you'd think that they'd want that advantage and the territory advantage to then really open up a gap up against UTTP and Only. But that's been the highest ping we've had so far. I think the highest was 40.3 million that I personally saw it. If we zoom out a little bit more and head over back towards the eastern side, again, there's obviously nothing going to be going on in UTTP Only's land. They do have a ridiculously enormous amount of the map carved out for themselves. If we zoom out, you can see they've literally got a quarter of the map to themselves, which is reflected in the fellowship rankings, which I'll show later on. And the only thing that's really changed since then is they've taken one of these passes. A fellowship called ABWA has taken this pass, which I assume is kind of a small sub-fellowship. They're just moving around in their lands. Surprised by that one. But moving down towards the southeast, you'll see nothing else has changed. In the lands of Time and Only, they still hold the Mordor capital, and down in the south you have Dino Saw, who still own Umbar and the lands they've pushed up from there. And from there we kind of pinwheel round to where the kind of eventful moves have happened. You'll notice there's been a lot of movement here, very similar to kind of what I said in my last stream, is the continued fighting between Home, Drum, Time and Ungo eventually, and IRS against IRSS. and Mora would likely lead to one of the fronts being abandoned, as it did appear that they were pushing us full force, wanting to remove us, from the map altogether, which I'll get onto in a moment. And I did say they would therefore be abandoning the front with Dino and Saw. So the main events from this are, is at the start of the week, Dino and Saw were not moving upon IRSS and Mora. They were still at the same location they were previously. I believe they had an agreement in place with IRSS and Mora, and we were essentially taking heavy losses. As a kingdom, we definitely were not as strong as the IRSS Mora kingdom, but we also had some support from Time and Ungo, who's the purple kingdom here, who had pushed down through Celebrant Fields and Gap of Rohan and were trying to move towards Edoras. There was a lot of scrapping around this kind of region up against IRSS, but actually eventually IRSS broke through Time and Ungo. Despite Home and Drum also pushing elsewhere, they did repel us both whilst fighting at the same time, and I believe pushed Time and Ungo all the way back. I think the only land they held around here was Celebrant Fields. They might have held the Wold as well, but I think it was just Celebrant Fields, and the rest was then taken quickly by IRSS and Mora. So obviously that was quite impressive that they took on both kingdoms at once. Maybe Home and Drum's not having its best season, but taking on Time and Ungo as well, who are a very strong kingdom, is very impressive. But then from there they moved to Gap of Rohan, as you will see, and then they also carried on pushing towards our capital at the time, which was Orthanc. At this point, Dino and Saw, I believe, stepped in and messaged and spoke with the IRSS Mora kingdom and said, because simultaneously while they pushed here, I should say, they'd also pushed through the pass that I detailed about previously and had started pushing up, took Tower quickly and were pushing up through Nedwaith. And you can see recently now they've taken Miniriath as well. So we're left currently with only Erin Vaughan in this area. So because they pushed all the way through there and pushing our capital, I believe Dino and Saw said to them that if they tried to zero us and take us completely off the map, then they would be forced to kind of step back in, as it were, which didn't deter. As you can see, the wars are still going on, which led to Dino and Saw, because IRSS and Mora were over by us, being able to unopposed, or reasonably unopposed, push across through the Gondor realm, and they have moved impressively quickly. I believe they came through this pass here originally, and they very quickly moved straight through. So this is where their battlefield was previously with IRSS, and they've quickly moved through all of this, continued moving across, picking up keeps like Pelagia along the time, and eventually also taking Dol Amroth from that kingdom. However, before they took Dol Amroth, the IRS Mora kingdom had taken Orthanc from us, so they reformed. They started the reform process before they lost their capital, so they have been able to get their kingdom back on the map very, very quickly. But as you can see, they're continuing to lose lands here to Dino and Saw as they push across the map. We, of course, also, as you can see, now own Nan Lefnui as well. Due to not having the spawn at Orthanc, a lot of us have actually been relocated out of that region and ended up dropping into Nan Lefnui. As you can see, that does include myself. And so we just made a push to, as I said, we're basically looking just to try and do as much, do as much damage as we can to IRSS Mora's kingdom progress. Despite the losses we're taking, we're doing what we can to kind of stall them. And taking Nan Lefnui has definitely helped that, and it's also helped us build up some more resources. Meanwhile, in the southwest, Andrast is still owned by IRSS. However, it is looking like it's going to be taken soon by another fellowship, which is Raw. So Raw here, I believe, are allied with Dino and Saw. They don't have their own kingdom, but they're working with Dino and Saw to help them and their progress. So it looks like they're going to try and take Andrast soon. And yeah, so IRSS Mora are left with a couple of areas around Rohan and Orthanc, and are also trying to take the rest of the Orthanc Road. I know that they kind of said the plan was to get one of the three kingdoms that they were previously warring with out of the way, and therefore that was us, as I think we were probably the easier of the three targets. As I've said, we are in a bit of a rebuilding season, so and some of our participation's been disappointing compared to previous seasons. Full credit to the guys that have shown up, but there's quite a few that haven't, which means that we're not giving, despite, as I said, we're always going to be the small fish in this very big pond server. We still haven't given a showing representative of home in previous seasons. Even last season, the participation was brilliant, and we just haven't seen that yet, unfortunately. But so I think the plan was to zero us off and kind of try and net off the resource loss in the regions behind them with the resource gain over here. Of course, as these are spawn regions, the resources aren't as rich as kind of additional follow-on regions like Rohan, areas like Fangorn, etc., as there aren't any tiles bigger than 230, I believe. But I think their intention eventually was to get us out the way and then maybe move on some of the Chaos regions, which would free up some of the, move some of the Chaos commanders towards them and lead to, whilst IRSS would, take a lot of damage doing so, it would allow UTTP only to progress. At least that's the kind of objective view I took of it and what it seemed to look like. I don't know if that is the case. That's just my opinion. However, I'd say the kind of netting off effect at the minute isn't really working well. You can see there's some of these pings are, they're kind of medium pings. We're just kind of going into kind of guerrilla warfare at the minute and doing what we can. They're all fairly small pings. There's still little battles going on in Fangorn, mainly just scraps with a couple of players around Fangorn. And the only kind of real battle that's happened today is this one around Isengard. I believe the ping hasn't fully updated. But Drum made a small push towards Orthanc. And you can see that that's kind of still going on with IRSS Mora pushing and clearing the Drum players out at the moment. But again, it's things like this that are really stalling their kind of movement and allowing the progression for Dinosaur and Tyburnungo to swallow up those resources, because I believe Drum made it to, I think they were around this kind of region here. I think they did at one point take this stack. Maybe they were stacked here, I think. So there was progress. At one point last night, Home actually also had cleared a lot of these forts around here, and we were preparing to try and take Orthanc away, but when IRSS Mora Kingdom woke up in the morning, they did react quickly and remove that threat. So at the minute, as I said, we're kind of engaging in guerrilla warfare. Obviously, we don't have a kingdom at the moment, so we're having to be very careful not to engage accidentally with Drum, who obviously have tiles very close to us, and we're also struggling a little to keep resources up. If I show my kind of personal region around Nan Left Nui, you can see, whilst it looks like we have a nice lot of tiles with 195, pretty much all of them are here, where I've missed this one here, where I kind of went on a bit of a mental spree in the last day or so, trying to clear out, because this is right on the pass to Tower Lower, and so there were a couple of IRSS keeps here which I relocated, and then there was obviously an enormous number of forts, so I've had to spend a massive amount of stamina clearing all those out, which is why I own all these 10 power tiles, as originally they had forts on, and I haven't seen need to drop them yet, as I think at one point we were on about 15 tiles today, so might as well keep them just for the resources, to keep resources coming in, and this is about as resource rich as we've been for a while. But you can see there's still work to do. We have just to the south of us there are still a lot of IRSS tiles and active commanders at the minute. So there's this Adam D, and there is Doko free to play as well, and you can see there's regions where a couple of other relocated players are, but it's quite funny because as not just us, as various kingdoms get relocated, they keep being relocated into the Nan Left Nui region. I don't know why the game keeps picking this, because this player is a raw player, so he's been relocated also into the same region, not very far away from where myself has been relocated. but we're just getting dropped into these regions in the middle of IRSS keeps, not far away at all, 20, 30 tiles, and we're just being dropped straight in the middle of them all, which is pretty crazy. Look, so you've got Tyrox here as well with protection, so they can't relocate us. We're just being dropped in the middle of all of these IRSS players, which kind of again aids our kind of guerrilla warfare tactics a little bit, I suppose. I'll go through one last thing, which would be kind of rankings with fellowship rankings, and I've kind of got my head in the way for now. I'll move it out of the way in a moment, but you'll see that as I spoke about, the north east of the map and a lot of the east is owned by only a UTTP. They have an enormous amount of land, so unsurprisingly they are top of the kind of fellowship production charts. Chaos with the northwest, of course, as well have a lot of land, and they are also second with their kingdom. And then comes Dino, Saw, and Time and Ungo. Dino and Saw, of course, have now taken a lot of that Gondor region and those resources, so they have flown up to over 4 million with their kingdom. Similarly, Time and Ungo to over 4 million. And this is where you start seeing the kind of damage and effect that this scrap between ourselves and IRSS Mora comes into play. Because you'll notice in 9th, where we were previously when I updated earlier on this week, we were 9th. Obviously, we're no longer 9th. You now have Jedi here, who I believe are kind of a sub-fellowship of Sith and kind of aiding the Chaos Sith partnership. Then comes Sand up in the north, who have been scrapping with UTTP. Then you start seeing IRSS, Mora, and finally us. And between those three fellowships, there is only just above 2 million resources. As a kingdom, between themselves as a kingdom, IRSS Mora are now left with 1.6 million, which I think I covered it in my last video and said that that's likely what happens with them focusing us, is they will lose a hell of a lot of resources and potentially get to a point where their resource production falls so far behind Dinosaur, Time and Ungo that it likely will hit a critical mass at some point. And I think it's quite likely they will hit that point, or have already hit that point, as if both of these fellowships take them on, it's 8 million, over 8 million production up against 1.6, which doesn't matter how hard you scrap, you will run out of troops and you'll struggle to bring them back in. That is aided somewhat by the merit store, giving an extra access to resource every day if you are fighting, but there's limits to what you'll be able to produce. And then additionally, we have Drum down here in 15th, so between us as our kind of kingdom, though we're not a kingdom at the moment, we only have about less than 1.2, 1.3 million, so we are equally suffering for tiles. So that's kind of an update of how the server's moved in the last couple of days. So I start actually kind of taking a look at myself and moving on. I'll address some of the comments quickly. Hello, Rothgar. Sorry it's taken me a little while to address your comments. I appreciate you kind of commented straight away, but I wanted to kind of get into the server update as soon as possible and then come back to it. But so I appreciate your patience. What commanders am I running this season? So we've finally started getting a couple of other commanders combat ready. I've been fighting pretty much only with Witch King so far this season, which has left me struggling with anything with burn resistance, which IRSS Mora have run a superior Hallberg with burn resistance on pretty much every commander that I've hit, so I have been struggling quite a lot. He's obviously only respect 3 as well as when he picked him up this season, and I'm going to give him his first try. Despite that, he's even at only respect rank 3, he has been fantastic fun. Like when you don't hit burn resistance, Witch King is just so much fun, as you do get crazy results with him. And we've got reasonable gear building up now. We just need a couple more drums and I think 2 more cutlasses. 2 more cutlasses to be able to fully refine our melee might cutlass, which I definitely need to start looking to get in much more of, as with the way that alchemists and reapers are so powerful in Kings of Men, we definitely need a few more of those. And then we've now finally got kind of a second commander going with Dwalin hitting level 47. Still a little under-leveled as we haven't got any level 50s yet, which, as I said, that week I took off in the first week of the server through illness definitely left us very far behind. That time we would have spent farming crossings and neutral tiles was completely lost. Normally we'd have 4 or 5 level 50s by now, but we're finally getting things moving. Gandalf and Isildur have primarily been farming for now, just trying to pick up tiles where possible, but they have done a little bit of combat. Gil-galad's basically leveled up purely through the tile farming, a lot of which has been the last day or so in this region. And before we lost our 300 tile, shout out to Rimoda, thank you for that. I think I mentioned him previously with his brilliant Kirun, and nice guy, and chat with him a lot. But I took my 300, so no more mocking for Elrond, but we've been using a couple of scrolls on him as well to kind of trying to get him up and ready. So those are kind of the commanders I've been using. For combat, it's primarily been Dwalin and Witch King, though. Hello, fellow of the Rings. Thank you for dropping in. It's very much appreciated. So yeah, we're kind of just going to have a look around now and see what we can do kind of this evening, get things moving. Rob, I drop and retake my own lands for power leveling. I have been considering that. I do have these couple of 200 tiles up here, which I could just repeatedly drop and retake. And I also, before I forget, need to link myself up to this crossing, as I accidentally dropped the tile connecting to it earlier on. So I was using this for a while when we were located kind of up in Edwaith. We were farming these spirits of the woods. Of course, that we now no longer have links to those as that land's been cleared through. But they were very handy for Witch King to get him up to 49, which is why Dwalin kind of came into effect, because I could then move my scrolls onto Witch King. Don't have too many scrolls available, and wherever they are, they're all in like ridiculous places like this. Because when we got shifted this morning, we had about 15 tiles, or last night rather, we had about 15 tiles. You can see all of my tiles are in this region. So the scrolls just got dumped in the nearest tiles, which were like random stray tiles in the middle of nowhere. And I think we also had 2 more scroll tiles, which were actually located up in an Edwaith, and then got taken by IRSS, which meant that we lost out on that experience, unfortunately. We can still do a couple of these ones, though, where if we just sweep a couple of these mobs, we will pick those up and can see who we can kind of level up. Oh, and as we speak, Dino and Saw have continued moving in on IRSS and Mora, so that's another region they're kind of looking like they're going to lose. Why is there so many guards of the tower there? Of course, this will be good for levelling up these commanders as well. So while they're going around, let's take a quick look up at Helm's Deep and see what's going on. So I assume with them pushing through, they can therefore only include all the forts. They just came straight in and took it. It's a shame we don't have... as far as I can see, it's still fog of war, so we can't actually see how many commanders they have there at the moment. But they came in and took it with keeps still in place and enemy forts. I wonder if IRSS put up any resistance. I'm not too sure. But I assume then they're going to look to move towards Orthanc, which will then remove IRSS Mora away from us, or away from them anyway. I don't know if we'll be able to do a deal to kind of get a capital back. Who knows? Dinosaur might choose to keep it, as of course there are rewards at the end of this season for how many Rings of Power kind of regions you own and how many designated structures you own. So potentially they might want to keep these for their own rewards and for their ring titles. We shall see. Obviously, from our own personal perspective, we would love to kind of try and get access to that, reforming our kingdom, but I'll leave that up to our leader, who's, so far in my opinion done a very good job. It's been tricky, as I said, participation from home, been trialing a lot of new blood and trialing a lot of new players, and participation hasn't been as good as it's been in previous seasons, which can get very frustrating for leadership. So I just thought I'd shout out Vanara and Amelie for the fantastic work they're doing, and also to Mark White Tiger, who's been a brilliant addition to our team so far. From Jake, how do you set it so it shows the level of your tile on screen? If you didn't know this, if you go into this search region by clicking up here where the little magnifying glass is just below your map, if you then go to the top sub tab where there's the search for tiles option, you'll see down here at the bottom there is this ticker for power level on or off. Previously I always left this off as I was pretty good at, well, I thought I was pretty good at spotting tile power levels just from the kind of appearance of the tile. But then I think I had a season where I twice hit, I think it was a 90 power tile instead of a 40 power tile, which at that start of the season led to huge losses and a massive setback of troops, which obviously in the first day can make a massive difference. So I decided to switch it on and leave it on as just to kind of prevent those mistakes. And in my opinion, as far as the UI goes, it's not too intrusive, so personally I don't see any reason not to leave it on. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Definitely helps. I found it helpful anyway. So a few more scrolls. If we keep sweeping, we can get a few more of those to see if we can level somebody up. I didn't realise I had Dwalin sat here with alchemists on for some reason. Where is Dwalin? If I can't remove all his units, where have I got? Oh, he's sat there. Let's pull him back so I can actually give him a proper troop composition. Meanwhile, Lurtz can link us up to here, and I think Aragorn has linked us up to this last final fort he has. So let's just send some siege over. I think Gothmog will have regenerated stamina. But you'll notice pretty much every single one of my commanders is low on stamina. A few of these are regenerated, but when we've been clearing all this area, at one point we'd used at least for one full use of stamina, we'd used every single one of the commanders available, which is pretty crazy. Let's get Gothmog with some siege as well, and hopefully he can clear this out. And if we reinforce Aragorn as well, he's got berserkers, and that'll do. Hopefully that'll be enough to take out this last fort. It's only a low level fort. Right, sweeps again. Let's keep doing these. It's useful anyway just to keep the grain flowing in. You'll notice our resource production, it's actually not too bad. I get this a lot of 10 and 40 power tiles, but actually the resources we're getting from them are reasonably okay. And of course we have the 15,000 fellowship bonus propping us up as well. Usually I aim for 50, 60k plus minimum, but in this season where we're producing kind of 30k power and the fellowship itself only has 700k, can't complain really too much. I'm praying that somewhere in this season, or in this kind of game progression, they will bring in a server-wide merit ranking, as I'd be quite interested to. There he is, to see that. They have, I'll show you in a second, brought in a new kind of merit ranking system, which I can't fill him. Oh well, I'll do. A new merit ranking system which shows actual merit within your fellowship. So previously we always had to go target, teamwork, and it will show the leaderboard of contribution within your kingdom. Of course we haven't got a kingdom, so I can't see that leaderboard. But one thing they have brought in, which is good, is if you go to your fellowship and you click member, you can see the amount of merit that every player has earned during this week. And as part of the leadership group, or a former leader, is being able to see the merit that players have picked up this week can be very useful, particularly in recognising activity levels and participation within your fellowship. So you see here, obviously merit is based on how many troops you defeat, so often you're always going to see your bigger, stronger players at the top who obviously win more of their fights than they lose. So some of our great players here, Sampi is fantastic. Gugu Zhao, who's been one of player who's been with me since season 1, close friend. Both of them around 300k. Hollow, who's got some of probably the best gear in home, sitting in third. Whereabouts are we? I don't think we're anywhere near here. And I guess we're at 130k so far this week, so we're in the kind of top 10 or 15, and I'd say, considering we don't have the strongest commanders, I think we're doing pretty well for ourselves, doing what we can. So there's a lot of familiar kind of names there sitting at over 100k. But I can imagine other fellowships, there's, think about IRSS, there's probably some there sitting on like 1 million this week and things like that, which is crazy. But I think that's a really good addition that they've brought in, that you can see the merit ranking of everyone in your fellowship. I'm hoping at some point they'll bring in, with these rankings up here, they'll bring in maybe a 4th and 5th tab for merit. Either merit this week or merit overall in the season. Both would be ideal, to be able to see, who's doing the biggest, the most damage during the server. Reese, IRSS player, Chaos or only groups would be winning on that merit. Yes, I think I agree. Well, I don't know, I think UTTP would definitely be up there as well. I wouldn't undersell them. Time and Ungo did a fair bit of work, but I think IRSS would be... only, of course, is the UTTP group. Sorry, ignore me. Yes, I agree with you that the battles up here that have been 40 million pings, the amount of merit players would likely have been earning from that would be crazy. Though, of course, participants don't always equal merit. As I said, it depends on how many merit is awarded based. I think there's a certain amount of merit you get per troop that you defeat, and that merit is increased depending on the tier level of the troop. So if both groups, which I know they are massive whale groups, then the losses might not be that much, but I imagine a 10 million ping would generate quite a lot of merit either way. I think there'll be a couple of players definitely in IRSS that will definitely be up there. What's his name? For the fellow I mentioned earlier, Rumeda, will definitely be up there, as he's been a constant menace with his 5 full gold commanders who's been putting home to the sword. I imagine he'll be up there as well. Who's of course from your fellowship. So we're just going to kind of keep moving ourselves for now. I think we might clear a few of these forts. We're not going to push down here quite yet to this player. Just going to clear a few more of these forts at some point. Gothmog's on the way. Let's clear this last fort so this region's reasonably kind of secure and we have some backing for resources. I think we just completed the scroll as well. So who do we want to put those on? Most of these aren't near a next level. We'll probably put these on Dwalin, to be honest. If we want to get him up around, obviously we want to get him to level 48, 49, so he's more combat ready and we can start doing a little bit more. Admiral Rex, Rue was number 1 in our prestige ranking before our kingdom split. That's interesting. Does the has this reformed I just didn't realise that. So Mora's reformed the kingdom. Have they not reformed with IRSS? That's interesting. I did not realise that. I assumed it was just a full reform of the kingdom. I didn't realise that IRSS and Mora hadn't formed a kingdom together, that Mora just formed a kingdom by themselves. I don't know, is there any reason kind of for that? Is there any reason why? IRSS has cooldown to join. That makes sense. So at the minute I assume you can't see leadership rankings. Yeah, I imagine when that does become available again, he probably would be top. As at least from our perspective, he's definitely put us to the sword, as I said. I think at one point I hit a Sauron with 3 different commanders and all bounced off. Even with focus protection on, didn't have much of a chance, unfortunately. But it's brilliant to see. Good player, and thankfully not one of the one of the toxic ones, as you can often see that players, when they if they win a lot, can get somewhat smug, shall we say, but in my opinion he's not one of them, thankfully, or at least not to me. So let's keep leveling up these comms. Particularly, I want to try and get Dwal in that last 120, was it 120, 150,000 XP towards getting to the next level. We'll leave Gandalf and Isildur for now. I think I'm also going to get Elrond to take that 150 power tile over here. Honestly, didn't realise I'd left that behind. Just needlessly wasting one of the bigger resource tiles I would have. Probably going to pick up these 60s, to be honest, as well, as they do generate valuable resource either way. Of course, there's a couple of 150s down here as well. And we do also have Gandalf and Isildur currently sat in Fangorn doing work for us, picking up. There are only 90 power tiles, but you know, every resource tile at this current point does make a fairly big difference. So we'll do what we can. I've spoken to a fair few of the Time and Ungo players and asked if I can take one or two of these 150s on my way through to get the 90s, and thankfully they're very understanding in that regard. We can actually move on these ones over here without too much issue. Yeah, of course these 90s are like buried amongst their kind of bigger tiles, so I'm obviously not going to take the big tiles, but I'm trying to get access to these 90 tiles just to get our production up. There's a few people we can link to scattered around. I was considering also bringing some of our bigger commanders up here to kind of try and farm Ents for experience, but I think I hit it once with Witch King. I took, you know, I think it's about 3/4 of an army, but by taking down the whole tile, it's not worth it for 200k XP. At least in my opinion, not when there's wars to be fought. The season's a stunning example of how this game is dying, in your opinion. That's interesting. I think with the games dying or not, I'm not too sure, as I quite often go back and play Season 1s. Particularly when I'm waiting in Bag End, I quite enjoy playing Season 1s. It's good to help new players coming in, and I do see quite a few. Obviously, whenever you do Season 1, there's always going to be players replaying similar to myself, but I do see a lot of new players. So there are definitely players still picking up the game. It's just a case of trying to trying to keep them motivated and interested in carrying on playing the game. At times, there are things that could be done better, in my opinion, to retain new players. I think that Bag End in particular is a huge issue at this point. It did work when there was only two campaign seasons in there, but now we're hitting the point where there's players who have played 11 or 12 seasons, and teams like the ones in this server. The fact that they can jump in a Season 3, a Rebuilding Glory server, basically, which would be the server that a lot of teams will play in right after they finish Season 2. They'll often choose to play Rebuilding Glory. And if you're a Season 3 player coming up against teams like this, it will absolutely demolish their motivation for the game, basically. And that's the kind of thing that will lead to a lot of players, the loss of new players and the game dying, in my opinion. I think Bag End needs a serious rework, and maybe there needs to be server matching based on, I don't know, like a bracket of seasons played or something similar to that, though I don't know if there's enough players for that to be possible. I think that's the biggest issue, is its retention of new players. I think there are still kind of plenty of new players coming in. It's just how the game decides to retain them. Though I would say I think a server like this actually is probably, in that regard, quite healthy for the game, as all of these teams are now in one server together, as they should be. Means that a lot of the other servers that are starting up now don't have these teams in, so potentially there's a lot more fun to be had for kind of teams maybe home drums level, kind of medium large teams. But that's just my kind of opinion on the matter. I do think that there is quite a big problem as well with balancing, which leads to teams like this which have a lot of resources, let's say, and I mean real life resource, having a heavy advantage. There's things that need to be balanced. So, for example, the Frenzy Gigantic Hammer is by far and away the best item in the game, and it's not even close. It's the best, best in slot item for probably half the commanders in this game. And if it isn't the frenzy one, it's another variant of the gigantic hammer. The ability to get a large amount of might, +6 attack, and an ability like commander follow-up with no round limit is pretty broken in my opinion. Frenzy does definitely need a tweak to limit the number of rounds that it is applicable. Obviously it's notably broken for commanders that have the hunt down skill, as it repeatedly triggers hunt down, meaning the enemies take a huge amount more damage. So that's why it makes that's why it's notably broken on Khaldun and Dwalin, for example. However, there's plenty of other commanders that it is still pretty broken on. If you wanted to wail out Gandalf the Grey, for example, his heals from the Grey are based on the number of damage interactions that the commander does, which is why Mind Split was previously one of the better items for him, as it gives you half a chance of dealing 2 instances of damage in that round. If you think about fully refined frenzy, that goes up to 90%. So you'll be doing double the amount of heals as a regular Gandalf, and that can be an enormous amount of healing. And it doesn't just give, say, for example here, if I fully strengthen this, it'd be +3 attack to men and elves. The gigantic hammer gives +6 to any race, which is pretty broken in my opinion. And then similarly, you've got its synergy with other broken commanders. So I don't actually have her unlocked, but it's synergy with Sunind as well, for example. Which skill is it? Feint, that's it. So for each 5 instances of damage dealt by the commander, all of your units' next damage dealt goes up by 35% when fully strengthened. So if you can get a 90% chance of follow-up every round, you're going to trigger Feint more often, therefore deal a huge amount of damage with your units. So this'll you already have the Arbalests massively buffed. You give them +6 attack from the hammer itself, and then you're also further buffing. They'll follow up themselves as well, and then you're further buffing them with Feint. The weapon synergizes too well with some of the already best commanders and does break them, in my opinion. I think it definitely needs. That's the most notable item anyway that in my opinion needs a tweak. There is a ability that was kind of the predecessor to switch this over to the evil one, to the frenzy hammer, and that I think it's reckoning that it's on. I could be wrong. Yeah, here we go. So a reckoning, for example, can give +1 attack to, and it's race limited as well, so it doesn't apply to all commanders, which helps to restrict and not make the item too broken. And it only gives +3 attack, so it's not too overpowered. And then the predecessor to frenzy was accelerate. So accelerate, when fully refined, gave the commander a 90% chance of giving follow-up every round. Obviously it doesn't have the negative effect of reducing normal attack damage, but commander's normal attack damage is pretty low anyway, so that's it's not much of a downside. But the main limitation is this only applies to the first 3 rounds. So Khaldun previously, I believe, is best in slot. I think it was the Reckoning, or it might have been. I think it was Reckoning. It might have been another item with Accelerate, but it's very, very strong before it, as it had the same trigger kind of synergy with Hunt Down, but it had its limitations, which made it not broken. So I think the Frenzy Hammer not applying to 3 rounds, applying to all 10 is definitely needs a rework. Sorry, I've kind of ranted about this a little bit. Not salty at all that I don't have a gigantic hammer with Frenzy, definitely not. I'm sat here with, a million respect items kicking around, tokens and all of these chests, just waiting for one to pop up in my store. I mean, I will still complain about it's broken even when I'm using it, but I definitely want one for myself. But it's almost unbeatable once you get it running. Dune's the most broken with it. It pumps out 100k plus. Yes, exactly. I completely agree. It's not just the fact that it boosts his own damage to 100k plus. The fact that it triggers that hunt down, so it means your troops deal a massive amount more damage, is crazy in my opinion. I don't know if we have any reports. Let's see if we can find one against a Khaldoon. We fought a few, but I don't know if we fought them in the last few days. See some of these Sunins. I bet they've got. This one hasn't got Frenzy, but a lot of them you'll see will be using Frenzy. Here we go. So yeah, Frenzy, Gigantic Hammer. You look at a Khaldoon, you're pretty much, if it's a high level player, you'll almost always see a Frenzy Hammer on it, and it's just too broken in my opinion. So the skill I was talking about that is broken with this hunt down here. So yeah, damage. So after the commander attacks against an enemy target, they receive 11.2% additional damage. But that's not always 11%. It's also modified by might. So if your commander has a lot of might, like this Khaldoon here with 354 might, that'll be more than 11%. It'll probably be more around like 15, 16% if you check the battle log. Not only that, it lasts 2 rounds, and it can be stacked twice. So if you have follow-up on your commander, you can stack that twice in a single round onto one enemy target. So they'll be receiving 30% more damage, and it will last for 2 rounds. And then the next round, if he attacks another target, you put that 30% stack on that target. You see where this is going, and every single round, you're basically constantly going to have 2 enemy targets that sit with a around a 30-35% damage received debuff, so they're taking an enormous amount of damage. Normally you'd only be able to keep that going, obviously with a 2-round cooldown on 2 enemy targets. What that does also mean is it means that when you face a commander that has a mono stack, so if you think about, say, like a Dwalin, for example, even if it's a mono stack with Sentinels and March Ward and single command, once those have gone, this hunt down debuff is going to be purely applied to that mono stack, so it'll permanently have that debuff for the whole battle, which means you just chew through mono stacks. It makes them pretty broken. Let's see this report here. No, it's half army, but let's see. So here we go. So this is Wolf running, a reasonably strong Dwalin. It's got high might, nearly 400 might. I'm not a huge fan of the twin axes, but it is high refined and high strengthened, so it'll, a decent amount of damage. And then he comes up against this, and he got, as I said, monostack will get absolutely shredded by Frenzy Khaldoon. If you look at Khaldoon himself, he'll have dealt 140k damage on his own, if I move my head. And then his troops have dealt nearly 200k damage. That is insane. Most of the damage will have been dealt by the Reapers. And this also means this covers pretty much everything, because with this army setup, there's a few people in my fellowship who are not the biggest fan of it, but I think it's a very good setup. You come up against monostacks like this Dwalin, and you'll shred them because the way Hunt Down synergizes. If you come up against an Isildur, like a Whaled Isildur, the fact you're using Reapers will shred that. Maybe the only kind of things you could be weak to is something like a Witch King. Is this Khaldoon running burn resistance? It is, exactly. So it's not weak to Witch King either. The only kind of counter I can... I've struggled to find anything to counter at all, but just trying to theorise in my head, the only kind of real counter I can maybe think to it would be madness, and it wouldn't just have to be troop madness. I think commander madness would be potentially more important, as commander madness would mean he could put the debuff on his own troops. So that's probably the only real counter you have. Something like a Sauron or a Grima might do best against the spam of Frenzy. Denethor. The mighty Denethor. I think I'm considering doing a video on this, but I think the best of the bunch would actually be Saruman. You'll be surprised to hear. A commander not seen very often, but from my experience and watching, Saruman can absolutely shred Frenzy commanders, and I think a lot of that is down to I need to analyse the reports fully, but a lot of that can come down to the way his madness interacts with frenzy, and then also his interaction with his troop buffs and enemy debuffs. But as I said, Grima is also fantastic as well. If any of you are interested in checking out, I did do a video on countering physical damage commanders, and I did cover Grima and Sauron extensively in that, but Grima's definitely the best of the bunch. A fellow YouTuber of mine shared a report with, his name's Ombra TV, using Grima, and he shared quite a few reports of his Grima with me. I didn't want to post them myself in a separate video and step on his toes, as he does have his own videos on his Grima, so feel free to go and check him out. I'll definitely give him a shout out. And yeah, excuse me, he's found Grima to be fantastic for countering up against frenzy. Yes, I think that's probably is the. I can see Rex agrees with me. Grima's definitely the best counter. Yeah, I think it's that madness. Does this have the skill so I can talk about it? 2 enemy targets. So yeah, it's Wormtongue here. The fact that it inflicts madness on the enemy commander every 3 rounds means that he can inflict that debuff or damage received debuff to his own troops if you get lucky enough. Alex saw some Saruman reports today, and yeah, he's actually kind of nuts. I will be doing a video on him soon. Shout out to one of the it's actually another IRS player called Batu, who has a fantastic Saruman. I ran foul of it myself a couple of times, but yeah, I've seen him fighting against some of Time and Ungo's really wailed commanders, and I've also seen him fight against one of our own players, Sampi, the guy who said who was, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but the guy who's top of our merit ranking, and he has a pretty much full strengthened and refined Dwalin with Frenzy Hammer, and the Saruman just burned straight through it. So yeah, I'm going to do a video on that soon, as I think that's probably the best kind of counter meta commander at the minute, and it's a commander you don't see very often, but when put up to a decent respect level, he's one of the most effective commanders at the minute for his anti-meta, as he performs brilliantly against frenzy commanders, as I've said, and he also performs brilliantly up against Gil-galad as well. So counters a lot of the kind of regularly seen commanders. I think his only kind of weakness is probably burn damage, as is normally the way. But thankfully that has kind of its own easy kind of counters in itself. Right, where can we put... Let's capture a couple of these as well. What does Saruman do? If I go through his full kit, I haven't got the full build to hand, but I will run through it in the video. But for now, I'll just kind of show through his kit. So his bottom respect 0 skill tree has Palantir Scryer, which has a chance for succumbing himself to madness, which is obviously always a risk. It means he's going to have a slight amount of RNG, but he does have similarly debuffs to enemy troops. I'll try and find, where's the madness? So he has madness to the enemy units. I believe he has enemy commander madness as well somewhere. I could be wrong. Oh no, I'm completely wrong. It's just troop madness. But he does also have a commander stun as well, so he can. But equally with madness, that would be useful against frenzy, as if you can stun the commander, he therefore doesn't apply that debuff, and it will stop him twice in one round. But one thing Sauron does do is he buffs Uruk-hai really, really well. Like, the amount of power he can give Uruk-hai is crazy. You know, he's got buffs to melee units, and he's got a lot of other buffs to Uruk-hai units, for example. So if you run in with a specific build, I believe normally it's used in combination with the cruel hooks, which are these here. And there's kind of two kind of builds you can run with. Batu's one I've seen used very well, uses Might of Soldiers to improve that melee damage, but I've also seen it used fantastically well with Retaliate, which is a kind of build that's kind of slipped out the meta. Used to definitely be one of the meta builds, but what you essentially use is a small amount of swans, for example, to soak up the damage, and then you use an enormous stack of berserkers. Bet you weren't expecting me to say that. an enormous stack of the Berserker Urukai unit, and then if you also run him with other gear such as the Chieftain's Gaze with Urukai Command, you can deal an absolutely astonishing amount of damage in the first couple of rounds using those Berserkers. If you fully refine that, you can get 45% damage after round 3. So yeah, I've also seen it used well with Curse on the Berserker's Gaze, just because it means the enemy troops take less damage. Deal less damage, so you have more troops left over, as Berserkers can be quite squishy as units go. Trying to work out the best. I think I have some actually in. Oh, I haven't got anything in scripting. That's bad. I think I have some Berserkers kicking around. I had them on Aragorn, so there should be some around here. Unless I'm blind. Maybe they're all the way over here because I don't have them unlocked. Where are you? There they are. So the reason it's so good is the Berserkers, when when fully upgraded, deal 20% bonus damage in the first few rounds. Of course, with Retaliate, they'll also hit twice. If they're then hit by a melee unit, you'll get the Retaliate hit as well. And if you use it with something like Warcry, you can massively increase their damage, along with the buffs from Saruman, and they're immune to stun as well. So you basically, can't come back from it. Sauron's unique needs a nerf. Kind of not sure I agree. It's good and it isn't. Sauron's unique is strong. It's definitely his best in slot, but I'm not sure it's broken. Not in the same way that the Frenzy Hammer's broken. It's very good, very very good, but I don't think it's broken in my opinion. Rex and Reese have a discussion amongst themselves. Jake, an R23 guy on one of my servers runs him with snipers and swears by. Yeah, as I said, the main buffs from Saruman is to Urukai units, so I imagine you can probably run pretty well with any Urukai unit. Berserkers will be most effective, I think, in the most matchups, mainly because of that Saruman buff to melee units as well, plus the synergy with either Might of Soldiers or Retaliate. However, you could use other ways to buff snipers, and that way you'll be stronger. I imagine in RP that'd be very strong if you're an evil side team facing off against good side, as snipers therefore would chew through the kind of good side RP meta using a lot of ranged units, like Isildur's that aren't Respect 10, or because they use full range build, or Gil-galad's commanders like that. Thank you TMS for subscribing, very much appreciated. Cletion and Reese and Rex having a discussion. Double team all day, every day. I mean, I think technically it's a triple team, I think, rather than a double team. I mean, it was originally a double team between it's kind of single with us, then Time and Ungo got involved, and then Dinosaur kind of got involved once we got wiped off the map, so it became a triple team. But apologies, but it's how it plays out sometimes, unfortunately. We're left without a kingdom, so so that's kind of how it crumbles sometimes. Berserkers make more sense. Sam, I agree. Yeah, TMS, S&T. How's Fellowship doing this season? As I said, we haven't got a kingdom at the moment, so not great. It's a big, it's an insane server. Probably one of the biggest servers this game has ever seen, with 3 or 4 of the biggest teams ever. And we're small fish in this pond, as I've said. So we weren't expecting this to be, we're under no illusions we were going to win this server or anything like that. But all we wanted was a lot of scrapping and to give our new team members, a test and a running. And we've definitely given everyone a thorough field test, I think. So we've kind of got a lot of what we wanted out of this server. Though I know for the kind of main leaders doing diplomacy, it has been absolutely exhausting. 2 subs away from 1,000 subs. You are correct. Kind of keeping an eye on that the last day or so in the hope of hitting that 1,000. Thank you TMS for getting me one closer. It's very much appreciated. Reese, you think it's the biggest? I would be inclined to agree. This is probably the biggest server we've seen. Maybe there's a few others. I remember there were a few other big teams like Beer and Bait that were really big at one point. But I think Bait kind of split up and kind of became, or at least fell into a lot of these fellowships they're here at the minute. There was also Pran for a while, was absolutely massive on the evil side. You could probably replace ourselves or Burn Sand maybe with a couple of the big. There's a couple of the big teams around. Obviously, we lost last season to 2B and X Hub. You could probably chuck them in here if you wanted to make it slightly bigger. Maybe Ilil as well, or Sealer. Other massive teams that aren't in here at the minute. But I think overall, as a as a server overall, I think this is probably the biggest. And it's been made fun by the fact that we've got this new map, 2 Kingdom Fellowships. It's all been a bit of a new experience for everybody, which I think has led to a lot of fun and a lot of wildness around, as you've got to cram so many strong kingdoms into such a small area. It's made things a bit crazy. Cletion, you are my 1,000 sub. Am I on 1,000? If I'm on 1,000 at the minute, then very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Obviously a milestone I've been aiming at for a while. Definitely have to look to do a 1,000 sub video. Yeah, thank you so much for that. If that is the case, it's very much appreciated. Right, I've just kind of been sat here, not actually doing anything, just chatting away. But it's always fun to theory craft, especially. Oh, there it is. Thank you, Cletion. Popped up with a little bit of a delay, but yeah, thank you so much for that. I've been sat here doing nothing, kind of theory crafting, when kind of we could be actually moving things onwards a little bit. 1,000 Matham opening, I wish. Trust me, if I could pay for 1,000 Mathams, I wouldn't be getting stomped as often as I am. We're still humble players. Humble player running purple gear. I think we don't have much gold gear. We've got this helm for Dwalin and then a couple of bits for Elrond, but we're nowhere near the level of some of the players on this server. Like if we look on just like reports in general, it's a low level player, but the general level is absolutely crazy. I say that and suddenly it looks like it's dropping a little bit. That's just a single same player. Aretha's Sun End, Cronies, Witch King. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of full gold kind of commanders. That's a bit more like what we're generally seeing. Don't think I've got any reports of Rue at the minute, but that's the one that's been giving me absolute pain. Right, let's actually do something. How close is Dwalin to that level up? 100k experience. Right, let's get everyone over the line. I think that's a 90 power tile under there, so I'm actually going to march rather than just sweep. Definitely need to conscript some more troops as well for Dwalin. I used him quite a lot earlier, so I ended up burning through a lot of my tank troops, and I realised I've also left a load on Isildur and Elrond. Oh, I've also got this here, of course, I've linked up to, so let's take those troops off Gil-galad, he doesn't need those. But yeah, I do have some troops on Elrond we could take off for Dwalin, I suppose. But I just want to get that last bit of experience and get Dwalin up to the up to that level 48 mark, because then he'll be a little bit more combat ready. As for what I do to kind of celebrate 1,000 subscribers, I'm not too sure. I'll look into it and hopefully come back next week with something. We've still got down there. No movement kind of down here, but Zorro's getting slowly surrounded. I'm not expecting by any means for all these tiles to last. I think in the next couple of days it's likely those IRSS players start moving towards me and picking all of those back up. But for now, we'll kind of do what we can with what we've got. Don't need that stone at the minute. Let's get some more troops in the bag. I did need the stone. I could have upgraded, started getting towards dwarves. I've started building the dwarf barracks. Previously I was always putting guards of the tower on him as my gear on Dwalin doesn't require dwarf units. I'm not using the Durin's plate, for example, or the bassinet. But I found the guards of the tower, whilst they're reasonably tanky, they're not quite as tanky as the dwarf units. And in King of Men, you see a lot of use of alchemists. So yeah, I need that kind of extra fire resistance you can get from the Guardians. So let's just use up the last of our resources there. Bank a bit more grain for the apothecary. And we're actually approaching tile limits. I assume we can start dropping tiles off again. Suppose I haven't picked up a tip yet. I thought oh, we have done. Don't know if we got anything for that. Maybe I picked the wrong option. But yeah, quite often we get like 100k XP tips. But I did when I was in another area. But I think that was defeating swans. It looks like snaggers don't give those kind of tips, unfortunately. I was quite enjoying the 120k XP tips, and they were quite useful for power leveling. Or at least as I kind of leveled up Elrond through a lot of sweeping, I could then use the tips to level up stronger commanders and just speed through the tip. Where's another snagger? There we go. But yeah, hopefully I'm going to stream a little bit more of this, kind of keep things as the map, because the map's evolving so quickly. Obviously, like Miniriath only got taken earlier today. I imagine the movement then is going to be towards Erin Vaughan. But as they move, Dinosaur kind of follow them as well, as we've seen with Helm's Deep. I wonder if Dino and Saw are going to come through this pass. I assume they will. But yeah, I wonder what the movements are going to kind of be. We'll see, and I'll try and keep everyone up to date a little bit more so that everyone knows what's going on, because this server does move at a crazy rate. Like, particularly this southern region, it just develops constantly. I'll wait 4 weeks after the season ends to join one, so I can avoid real competition. If you want to get into a server, get into it now, basically. kind of dodge everyone as quickly as possible if you can. I have another account that I play with Echo, which is one of the fellowships that we played our King of Men with last season, and we were allied with, and the guys we were speaking to were really friendly and nice, and so I'm playing another season with Echo, which we've claimed Dogwood, and it looks like we're going to take the kind of Dominator title at the end. And I'm quite glad that our season ends in about I think it's a week's time, so we can jump into a server and dodge everyone in this server, though I think we might end up lining up with, I think it's Pran and maybe Seela and Ilil, so hopefully we could dodge them as well. T4 Elves give good tips as well as the Swans do. That's good to know. Who wins, Chaos or UTTP? At the minute, I'd have my money on Chaos, mainly because as long as this is deadlocked, UTTP have had the strength to push through into Chaos, so they obviously are able to do it. But equally, you're actually seeing here as I speak, Chaos are actually pushing through now. So yeah, both teams are making pushes that do damage to others. This is the way, that was the name of our kingdom. Okay, so you're actually seeing progress here, moving from from Sith here through UTTP. So I think, as I was saying, I do think Chaos win this. But the reason I was going to say is because possession is kind of 9/10 of the law, and at the minute, Chaos are fully in control of the Dol Guldur area. I think, as I said, I'm surprised they haven't taken the ring already. If they did take it, I think that with that buff, they would be unbeatable. I don't know if they're not taking it out of loyalty to another fellowship. I don't know if they have an agreement with either Taimungo or Dinosaur. I have no idea, but that would appear to be the only reason they haven't already taken it, would be out of agreement to somebody else. But I think because they currently have possession of Dol Guldur, I would be surprised if they didn't win the server, basically. So I think yeah, they'll probably win. No, they're not waiting for the event. The event's already underway. It's been underway for about a week now. I thought they would take it the first day it opened, because that 5% buff, as I said, is massive. But yeah, it's been open for a week and they haven't taken it, so there must be a reason they're not picking it up immediately. Chaos and UTTP has been dead even. Chaos made a massive breakthrough and it looked like UTTP had lost, but the next day they were back at the crossing. Yeah, that seems to be the case a few times. When I looked over and it was the 40 million ping, it was actually the other way round, and UTTP I think had got around to they destroyed basically all the forts up to about here. And then I checked back after work. I did believe that was in the morning, and then I checked back after work and it was back like this again. I was like, what? So you can see instantly this is kind of getting mopped up. So they're doing damage, but they're kind of not breaking forts. I assume, I mean, it's up to me to decide strategy, but I would definitely go, if you want to make damage, go for one of these Bjorning camps, get an hour's protection and get the whole team piled on there and fight from there. That would definitely be my my game plan. But yeah, I think both teams have made progress on each other at different points, which would suggest that they're both kind of equal strength. And it's just because the advantage is almost always with the attacker, because if you attack well, often you can arrange for your whole team to be online and you'll likely catch the opponent. Your opponents will never normally have more than like 50-60% online at any one time unless told to be online for a certain time. So normally the advantage will be with the attackers. What's the Northern Fellowship doing? I did kind of cover this a little bit earlier, but this is Burn and Sand, which took in Crew as well, who originally spawned down here with Dinosaur and then moved outwards. They're kind of having scraps as well, so there's another 10 million ping here. They're also scrapping with UTTP only after they were pushed out of these two regions, Gladden Fields and Upper Anduin Vale, by UTTP only. So I think that's kind of one of the things that helps give Chaos an advantage as well. So UTTP only are allied, I believe, to IRSS and Mora. But both are kind of getting overwhelmed by everyone else. Whilst I don't think anyone else is in, none of us, as far as I'm aware, none of us are directly allied. As I said, I can't speak for Chaos if they have an agreement with another team. That's why they haven't taken Dol Guldur. But at least with Home, we're not kind of directly allied, as far as I'm aware, with anyone. But we do have friendly relations, obviously, with the teams that have been trying to help us. And we obviously massively appreciate any help they've given us. But yeah, so everyone's just kind of in. It's just kind of the way the server panned out, in that everyone's expansion led to the same point. So in the case of Chaos, they expanded east, and Sand and Burn expanded south, and then UTTP only expanding west meant that those two came into contact. IRSS closed the door on us quickly by expanding upwards and blocking this pass, so we couldn't expand. We didn't want to expand north into Chaos, but then we were also blocked off south and east by IRSS, which led to our conflict with them. And then obviously Time and Dinosaur wanted to go west, and so they also hit IRSS. To my knowledge, we are not allied with UTTP only. I wasn't aware of that. I thought they were, because I've seen. I know you've played in previous seasons together, so that was my. As I said, I'm only kind of giving my opinions here. If that's not the case and I'm giving false information, then And of course I apologise in that case. But that was just how it kind of appeared from my external view. The Northern Kingdom was also fighting UTTP only. Yes, indeed, that's the ping I had here. Game might be decided by southern factions taking a side. Potentially, that is. Yeah, I don't think there's any kind of allies. If IRSS are not allied to UTTP, then there's kind of no allied down here to decide what happens up north. So we'll have to see. Because my impression was always that IRSS were allied, because it looked to us like they were coming through here to try and hit chaos to relieve a bit of the pressure on UTTP. But potentially that's not the case. We've done what we can to try and stall progress anyway. If you are leadership, I've not said anything about it. That's fair enough. It could be the case, or it could just be maybe not direct allies. Maybe it's similar to us with kind of the other factions where we're kind of in friendly talks. I'd imagine if your leaders have played with UTTP before, they are obviously probably on friendly relations anyway from previous plays together. So maybe it's friendly relations. But yeah, honestly, I think that's probably how they have done what I kind of mentioned. They've taken the Bjorning camps to give an hour of protection. Ideally now they'd kind of work towards building up as many as possible and then getting some relocate timers going. Yeah, it's massive teams here. So potentially in the next couple of hours or so, depending on how this chaos push evolves, we might actually see the kind of server being decided over the next day or so. I do need to go to sleep though. So I think we're likely to kind of end things there. We've burned through most of our stamina and kind of give it a good update and discussion. At this point, IRSS Mora is dead in the water. We have almost no regions. We're going to lose our kingdom. I do kind of agree with that, to be honest. I did give that opinion on my last stream, that I thought that this kind of, I wouldn't say kind of the easy option. I'd say it was the option to try and turn the kind of 3v1 that was developing into a 2v1 or a 1v1 by wiping home off the map. Was potentially a bad decision, because it gave up too much land behind you to the other factions unchallenged, and kind of we're never going to go away basically. Even if you wipe us, we just reappear nearby, as you've seen. And the decision to take our capital, I think, potentially was a mistake. Whilst we were kind of buried, we didn't need to be zeroed. Obviously I would say that is my kingdom, but I think zeroing us was what led to Dino and Saw making the move across. As far as I was aware, they were not going to move from outside your spawn region, as they didn't want the kingdom to end up dead in the water, as you said. But once we got zeroed, they decided to kind of do the same as almost a retaliation, basically. So I think that's potentially where the mistakes were made. As I said, I'm not in leader discussions between these parties, so this is purely coming from an outside observer. So I may not be fully correct in that case. I know on my last stream, one of your leaders disagreed with me and said that this was kind of the best strategy for you, and you were obviously between a rock and a hard place, so hard decisions had to be made. And as I said, there's no kind of bitterness from me from that. I've 90% of the players from IRSS I've had good relations with, and I'm it's the game. We all play the game. That's kind of what happens. I don't enjoy getting the DMs being called a rat, every day or whatever, and Fort's calling me a rat, but we're just playing the game and doing what we can. So, but 90% of the players have been respectful. Is Haruko in UTTP? I am not sure. Would he be near the top of the personal production rankings? I'll have kind of a scroll down here and see if you can spot. not near the top, if so. Yeah, not that I can see, unless I've already missed, or potentially he's renamed. Oh. Found you, Cletion. Assuming this is you. Shout out to this fella as well. Been very accommodating when I've been low on resources. Has pinged me a couple of his tiles in Fangorn and said that I can carry on and take them. And I believe he's going to allow me one of his 300s as well, which yeah, very generous. You know, doesn't need to be done. He's so shout out to him. Very good player. Very kind kind player, I would say, especially as I'm not in his kingdom. I love rat DMs. Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's they just kind of, I just laugh them off. In all honesty, I'm not here to get aggressive. I've done that in previous seasons, and if you fight toxic with toxic, it just spirals out of control. So I'm just here to laugh them off. In all honesty, Alex, lose. Yeah, I agree with you that whichever decision was made, it was always going to be a lose. If I think if IRSS stayed presence with Dinosaur without an agreement not to progress inwards, it kind of looked like they weren't going to go that way anyway, but if you stayed there, then you would have lost a lot of ground once we'd pushed into this region to us, Time and Ungo. If you pushed Time and Ungo, obviously that would probably eventually lead you into the path of Dino and Saw, and that kicks off that conflict again. And then by pushing us, obviously it led to problems. I just think that potentially we could have been pushed without taking the capital, would have maybe been the kind of best of both worlds, as that might have kept Dinosaur away, though I'm not sure that would have kept them away forever, as at some point they're either going to get bored and want to attack something, or they'll build up such a surplus of troops, high level commanders from farming, resources, that they wouldn't be defeatable. I'm not going to comment who the DMs are from. I'll leave it at that. It's a shame so many people are toxic. Every time you tell people to shut up, they just don't listen. Yeah, I agree with you. We kind of have a policy in home. We try and keep everyone out of world chat as much as possible. Though we have had previous seasons, I think it was notably about 2 seasons ago, where world chat just kind of went wild and there was no reining it back in, with both slinging mud. But normally home tries to stay out of world chat as much as possible, basically because it's just kind of good discipline not to get involved in world chat. Because if I've been heavily involved in diplomacy in almost every season with home, I think this is the first kind of season I've taken a full step back, and things people say in world chat, it could be a player who's not touched the game the entire season will come in and say something provocative in world chat, and that will just blow up diplomacy negotiations, even though it's come from like a nobody. So toxicity, hopefully we try and stamp it out in home as much as possible, just because it just blows back on yourself. Basically, it's like friendly fire. You think you're winding up the opponents, and you do, but it ends up blowing up in your own face. Anyway, I think that's about where I'm going to leave it. Been streaming for about an hour and a half now. It's, as I am in UK time, it's about 10:30, and work in the morning, so probably best to leave it there. Likely next movements is probably going to be to try and clear a little bit more space down here for myself, but I don't want to go too far and trigger a mass IRSS attack on myself, but that's probably coming eventually anyway. But with that, I think I'm going to leave it. If anyone hasn't already, if you could please drop a like, I would really, really appreciate that. It does help to ping the video out, get more suggestions, and helps with traffic for myself. Thank you to the guys who subscribed during this season, and obviously continued thanks to my long-term subscribers. It's very much appreciated. If anyone isn't subscribed, I would really appreciate anyone that does. I hope to see a lot of you around. It sounds like a fair few of you are already in our server, so I really hope to see you in game. Hopefully I don't lose too fluently to you. Yeah, and with that, take steady, have a good evening everyone, and I really hope to see you on the next one.